happened. And what we're talking about, if you haven't heard, is BASS, Bass Angler Sportsman Society, has officially entered the kayak fishing tournament scene. I'm Drew Gregory, and this is Hooked on Wild Waters. Boop, 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 boop. Dr. Noisewater, that is the emergency signal, because we are putting together an emergency podcast. And when I say putting together, I really mean loosely, just sort of quickly thrown together, because there's some big news today. Have you heard about this big news?
I have heard about this big news. There is definitely something announced today that really shakes a lot of things up.
Yeah, you have heard about it because I texted you about it. So, but in my sort of defense, or that's not even the right word, I guess, but excuse, I actually didn't even know about it until someone else had posted about it on Facebook, and I literally just happened to pop on Facebook at the exact right time because it literally just had happened. And what we're talking about, if you haven't heard, is BASS, Bass Angler Sportsman Society, has officially entered the kayak fishing tournament scene. So I quickly called up Dr. Noisewater and I said, hey, man, you up for an emergency podcast? And we haven't done one in a while anyway. I've been pretty busy. Was down in Florida doing some product testing with Jackson Kayak on the Kissimmee chain. And also my son got sick and we had to go get admitted to the hospital because he had like a fever for 3 weeks plus. And we had to figure out what was going on, if it was pneumonia, bronchitis, if it was viral infections, whatever, because antibiotics had not healed it or fixed it. So been a busy 3 weeks for me, or however long it's been since our last one, but this is perfect timing, emergency pod. So are you ready for this or what?
Yeah, let's talk about it.
All right, because there's a lot to talk about here. There's a lot to dig into. This is going to, I think, change the landscape of kayak fishing tournaments in a pretty big way. And I made a post on Facebook on my personal page and on Instagram and my Hooked on Wild Waters page to start gauging what people think is going to happen. Because I'm just curious. I mean, if the general consensus is that 3 national tournament trails can sustain, because it certainly didn't work out in the bass boat side of the world, now did it?
Not for very long, no.
Not for very long. So now, if by 3 national trails, we're referring to the Kayak Bass Fishing Pro Series and Trail Series, which is broken up into regions nationally. So really, you got 2 there that are national in a sense. You got the Hobie Bass Open Series and now the B.A.S.S Series, which is not linked with Hobie in any way. It's not linked with anyone other than or none of the other trails it's not linked with, but it is linked with a kayak manufacturer. I think Old Town is who they partner with. But so what does it mean for everybody? Obviously, we don't know, and votes will be cast by entries and how many people fish these. And what I think will happen is, like any free market, the better product will eventually win out. But I think this is going to cause the tournaments to really take a close look at how they operate, how their payout structures are, how the rules and boundaries are, anything they can do to gain an advantage over the other trails. They need to be figuring it out now, because you're a working guy, family man. You got stuff going on in your life. You got a wife. I mean, you're only going to be able to fish like 6 to 10 tournaments in a year, period. Right? I mean, what are you thinking?
Schedule permitting too, depending on if you lived, let's say, in Tennessee, you're probably the most central then and could travel around to most of these places the easiest, I guess, Tennessee, Kentucky area. Still, even with that, if you're looking at going to national level tournaments, I'd say you would have to max out at like 8.
Yeah.
I mean, just because between March and August, or even September is probably going to be your biggest window of when they're happening. And to be able to have the travel time and the entry fees and stuff like that, it's going to it's going to create a narrow margin of who could actually participate in the most that they could in all 3. So it's definitely going to divide some guys to pick and choose where they want to go.
Oh, yeah. If you think about it, everyone wants to travel as little as possible to get to a good payout, right? A big tournament with a lot of exposure, recognition, big payouts. So now, if you've got 5 new bass events sitting there, and you were going to have to travel 12 hours to get to a Hobie or a KBF Pro event on a nearby weekend, let's say that one of the bass events is being held, you're just going to pick the bass event. So that took a tournament entry away from one of the others. So it's certainly going to affect it. I mean, no doubt about it. But I guess time will tell what happens. But for sure, what I can see is happening with the bass. I've looked at this and I've put in, just so everyone knows, I have a spreadsheet of all these tournaments I want to fish. I'm looking at fishing, and my focus is the KBF Pro Series, possibly some of the Trail Series, just my region, and
Mhm.
the Hobie Bass Open Series, trying to fit in like one or two of those if I can. And then, of course, if you do well, because I believe there's going to be an Angler of the Year um, trophy and a standing, if you will, in Hobie Bass Open Series. And if so, I think you probably have to fish about 3 of them. This is just kind of what I'm hearing or sensing out there, if you will. And if you're
Yeah.
going to fish 3 of them, if I did well, let's say in 1 or 2, I might as well find a third one. So that's kind of where my focus has been. But here's what I noticed when I put in the bass events into my spreadsheet, my master spreadsheet. The bass events are very spread out, and they're pretty spread out in terms of where they're at, because Texas, there's only 5 of them, but Texas, well, I'll start with the first one, March 5th, Logan Martin Lake in Alabama, right the day before the Classic. So middle of the week,
Hmm.
one day. That's the other difference, just so you guys know out there. They're only one-day tournaments, or the BASS. They're one-day tournaments only, $250 entry fees. We're looking for 150 anglers, which would put the payout at 30,000, and that leaves, I think, 37 or $7,500 left over from what I saw on somebody's post.
But they're paying out 30 spots.
But they're paying out 30 down to 30 spots.
Hmm.
And if $7,500 is left over, I would imagine that some of that will go to administration fees or running the tournaments or whatever, and then some of it will go towards building the pot for the Bassmaster Classic the following year. Because here's what is happening with their 5 events. I can already tell this is what's happening, and I believe it says it in the press release. The 2021 Bassmaster Classic will be a championship event that will be held for only those who qualify for it. Now, maybe there's another side tournament that's open. I don't know. But just like the Bassmaster Classic, you have to qualify to get into it. It's usually about 50 anglers. There's going to be a Kayak Bassmaster Classic that probably a similar number of anglers, maybe 50, 75, will qualify for. The way you qualify for it is clearly going to be you got to be in like the top 10% of these 5 tournaments that they're holding this year.
Yep.
I mean, that's pretty obvious. So if you want to be in the Bassmaster Classic in a kayak, you need to fish just one of their events, because they're not. It doesn't look like they're a series. It's trying to allow for everyone to fish. The majority of their events, because
Yeah,
you
they
got
can't.
Alabama, Texas. You do have Tennessee, which those 2 are close, Alabama and Tennessee. But other than
Correct.
that, then you're at Wisconsin, Mississippi River, and then Clear Lake in
Hmm.
California.
Correct.
Very far away, other than 2.
So that's not. It's not so much as a trail series. Like, I mean, it it is. They don't even call it a trail series. It's a nation kayak
Yeah.
series. So each individual spot has to be your opening to get in. And now, if you're able to go to the Alabama and Tennessee ones, which are the 2 closest ones together, you're obviously increasing your chances, just as if you wanted to like
Hmm.
travel up to Wisconsin. But I don't think they're expecting everybody to be able to go out to Clear Lake, California to be like their 3rd or 4th event or something like that.
I don't think so. And I'm not even sure they will do an Angler of the Year sort of thing this year with these events, because
No, I think it's an intro year. I mean,
I think it
because
is too.
they clearly have stated that in 2021 there will be a classic for kayaks. There will be a championship of some degree for kayaks. So eh, I don't necessarily we're not maybe at a point where they'll make an angler of the year or like a season long thing in 2020 as much as they're building. This is the stepping stones to create the big one
I agree. They're
for
gonna, yep,
Bass or BASS.
yeah, they're gonna see like, hey, does this hurt or not? I mean, might as well try it. What's it gonna hurt?
Yeah,
And then if it works, then they'll keep rolling with it. And then the biggest question is gonna be,
yeah. It
I mean, are
says
they stealing enough market share from the other trails to have enough anglers to make it worth their time and what the sponsors' time and what they're getting paid by the
mhm.
tourism departments or whatever, however they're doing it. So
It's the
Time
Bass.
will tell.
The direct quote is the Bassmaster Bass or BASS Nation Kayak Series Championship will be held in conjunction with the 2021 Bassmaster Classic at a site to be determined. So they're already planning for a
Hmm.
big tournament to revel in the success of what happens this year.
Yeah, exactly. But a lot of the comments I've seen, it's kind of, I think it's kind of sad because why does everyone have to pick and choose a side? I mean, I get it. You have to pick and choose which tournaments you're going to fish, and honestly, I'm just like everybody else. I'm going to pick the tournaments that are closest in proximity. They give me the best payouts, obviously, like the big, nationwide sort of notoriety tournaments. But why can't we fish all of the above if we can? I mean, or just pick one or two, whatever. But why do we have to like actually go online? Everyone's just picking like, oh, I'm a Hobie guy, or I'm a gonna fish the bass, or
Yeah.
KB, down with KBF, or whatever comments you see people doing. Why do they have to? I don't get why people have to do that, because every one of those trails is giving us all an opportunity, and they all have their goods and bads. I mean, we wouldn't be here without KBF and what they did, and how they started this whole thing. And honestly, you can throw river bassing into that whole thing. I mean, we didn't have humongous numbers because we were a niche of people that like to fish rivers, but running, bass tournaments out of kayaks for 10 years. And the headline sponsor originally was Bass Pro Shops for the first 3 years. We held the results shows out of their stores, if anyone remembers those early days. But basically, all the work of leading up to these tournaments with KBF, River Bass, and local clubs, and now with Hobie coming in, have all got us to this point. So, whatever you feel about KBF or your thoughts on them, I mean, I would just say, like, you just, and I guess I'm saying this from a different perspective. I actually, ran a tournament trail, so I've got a little bit different insight on this. It's really stinking hard to put on a national tournament trail,
Mm-hmm.
picking your whole family up, driving across the country, tours and departments, all the sponsors, and sponsors let you down. Like, people don't understand. Like, KBF did have some struggles in the early years. I get that. People are complaining, making jokes like, "Oh, if you ever get your money," well, it's been a long time since they did not pay out somebody. Pretty pretty much right after the tournament. I mean, back in the early days, they had some issues, but River Bassin had some issues. There was times we didn't pay out the people when we should have, or get them the prizes as quickly as we should have, and it wasn't our fault. We got those commitments from the sponsors, so we
Yeah.
weren't trying to do that to the anglers. We got the commitments, but the sponsors didn't give it to us, so we can give it to the anglers. They couldn't give us the cash or the prizes. It's like, just get over it, everybody. Like, people uh, make changes, people make improvements, and KBF has come a long way from the beginning to now, and it's so much harder to pave the road, clear the road to begin with, and pave it, than it is just to hop on the road after it's already been paved.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all I'll say about that. It's a little frustrating because I mean, I was part of that. Trust me, I didn't get paid for a long time at
Yeah.
one tournament, a long time. So if anyone should have a gripe again and not fish KBF anymore, it's probably me, because I've been, it happened to me firsthand. But I also just have a different perspective and understand those things sort of happen, and there's definitely been a lot of changes and a lot of people that KBF has brought on board that have made things run a lot smoother, a lot better. If you go to one of their events, they're awesome.
Yeah.
Hobie events are awesome. Everyone says good things about Hobie events. I think they're great. I fished one, didn't have the best experience, but it was a satellite event, and people said that they've already, AJ's already said they're not doing those next year. But I mean, people that want to bash KBF, it's like, dude, I fished a Hobie event where they paid out 40% to the entire field. 40%, horrible.
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna not fish Hobie and dislike anyone that works for Hobie or puts that on. I mean, I love those guys. I mean, I'll still fish them. Sure, why not? I'll still fish Chad stuff, even though that happened to me. It's like, some people have to understand that it's not as easy as it sounds, and you have to kind of almost put it on and do it for a few seasons before you even understand what to change, what to fix. So now Bass just comes strolling in here, and that's great. It's given us more opportunity, but I don't think
Exactly.
it's the end of
And
KBF or anything, or end of Hobie. I think we're just gonna see what happens.
yeah, and if is anybody that's been watching for the past 4 to 5 years has watched KBF grow, should at this point realize what it takes to observe somebody running a national trail like this, because obviously those shortcomings from KBF early on were them learning how to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Bass already knew how to do this. You know, uh, Major League Fishing knows how to do this because they were split off, or whenever they were created, were based from professional fishermen being in the professional leagues already. They had an idea and an understanding of what it takes to support a system that is a national based sort of event. Whereas I feel like as kayak anglers, we were forced to build it ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that KBF and Chad did, is they figured out how to push through the walls and build it themselves. They didn't have that natural support system that these bigger companies have, because they did it years ago to build the bass boat ones.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's just kind of a point of contention to show that, you know, I think it's a success in KBF's eyes. It would have to be that we have finally got the attention of a national level sort of thing, because,
Mm-hmm.
and, in a certain perspective, this could help out KBF in the sense of this is now putting pressure on the MLF to play ball.
It absolutely is. I was thinking the same thing. I was like, you know what? It's going to put a little pressure on MLF to invest some resources, not just say, okay, we'll kind of take this, we'll take this KBF along, and redheaded stepchild is not the right word, but basically they just sort of inherited it, and
Inherited a project that they
yeah,
don't
just
necessarily have their hand in, but
yeah,
the
they didn't
FLW
draft it
did. But it's now they have extra stuff, assets that they picked up basically, and now
exactly.
it's like, what do I do with it? But now Bass has dropped this, or BASS has dropped this. It's like, okay, well, there's a big one called Hobie. There's a big one now. There's a big payout one that BASS is doing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
does it force their hand, or does it give them more to chew on about trying to be the best, or and
Yeah,
actually coming through with this pre-laid and path that KBF has made to partner with them
right,
to back that one. I mean, it,
exactly. It
that's
validates.
another angle to perceive.
Yeah, it definitely validates tournament kayak fishing and what KBF had done since the very very beginning, trying to grow it. So if nothing else, it does do that, and um, which is, I guess, a credit and a compliment to KBF. But at the same time, I think that it feels like another analogy I just thought of was if you're a head coach of an NFL team, a new head coach, and or a college team, and you have all these players in your team that you didn't draft or you didn't recruit, and now they're kind of like, what do I do with these guys? Do I like them? Do I not? You're kind of feeling out, but now it does put a little pressure. It's like, oh, wait a second, that somebody else is in this space and is interested in it, and I have this entity over here that was already in the space, the first one that created the space, if you will. So we definitely want to stick with them and keep it rolling. Invest in it some more,
Mm-hmm.
because they didn't pick it and choose to invest in it at the very beginning. So I think it's a good thing. The thing that I'm the most excited about is the more this gets on a professional level. I'm going to say this now, and I don't care. Hopefully somebody from these tournament series is listening and hears it, because I think this is super valuable information. Kayaks were built and meant, and we use them as a tool to access water that bass boats could not access. That was the original reason that most people got into a kayak. You wanted to fish places that bass boats couldn't get, because the fishing pressure is so much, so much less there. The fishing is so much better. So what I hope they do not do, the more you try to just duplicate what you're doing in bass boats on these lakes and just flip them into kayaks, the worse you will be.
Mm-hmm.
The more you embrace allowing people to access waters that are, more wild, and rivers and things like that. Um, like, for example, uh, there's a lot of backwaters in some of these lakes and places. It could be Santee Cooper. You name it, Chickamauga. There's so many lakes at Toledo Bend, Sam Rayburn. Just have so many good. The lakes in Shreveport that we fished for the national championship.
Mm-hmm.
So much water that kayaks can only get to, that bass boats can't. And that's where they were meant to excel. So if people write the rules correctly, and I don't know this for a fact, but I did hear that. Well, actually, I do know this for a fact. For example, the Hobie Tournament of Champions was just held on Lake Ouachita, which is the exact place that the KBF and FLW Cup was held earlier this year. Well, did you know that the river was cut off for even more of the river? I mean, there was no river in bounds for this Hobie Bass Open Series tournament. Well, okay, now you're just doing the same thing that the bass boats can do. Like you can only fish all the same water they can reach. So what's the point? I mean, up these creeks you couldn't go anywhere that bass boats couldn't go. So now we're fishing on weekends, a lot of these tournaments on the same water as the bass boats, which is actually more dangerous to be out there in these main lakes sometimes. We're
Mm-hmm.
not getting to take advantage of what the kayaks can do. And I'm not and there's no guarantee you get into wild places and you do any better. I mean, we know that. I mean, rivers don't and
Yeah.
creeks don't always have the biggest fish. I mean, whatever. There's a pretty good consistent bite, but they don't have the biggest fish all the time. And if you know how to fish those big lakes, certainly you're going to crush it, and you want to be out there on some offshore spot or whatever. But if they cut the more rivers and places like that are cut off, I mean, I'm hearing it from so many people. Maybe it's because I am so obviously I started river bassing, and a lot of guys I know like rivers. But what I'm seeing when I hear all the people I talk to upset about that, and I hear people saying I didn't go fish the Hobie Tournament of Champions or the tournament that was right before the Tournament of Champions. I forget what it's called, but it was the one you could fish, and if you win it, you're the last one that gets in the Tournament of Champions.
Yeah, the last
Uh,
chance, like qualifier tournament.
yes,
Yeah.
a lot of people I've talked to were like, I was going to go fish it, but then I noticed that there is zero river, not even anything close to river. It's all cut off at the bridge right there. I think it's Highway 27 is gone, cut off. So they're like, I'm not going to drive all the way out there to do that. Well, what I see is you just lost entries. You lost numbers. And man, right now I'm telling you, with the bass jumping in on this, every one of these trails is going to need every single person they can get any way they can get them, because it's going to be tough
Yep.
for them all to have 100, 150 people. And so if they embrace these places, these backwaters, the places that are fun for us to kind of try to find and figure out how to get into with a kayak. If they embrace that, then they're going to get more entries. It's just plain and simple. And then what's cool is people are going to find some really cool places, and they're going to catch a lot of fish and big fish. Which on stage, what draws the attention? In the weigh-ins of these bass boat trails, when they hold up all these big fish. Well, you want to show them that kayak anglers can do the same thing. So it's only a win-win for everybody. If we're catching more and bigger fish, that's good for your tournament trail. It shows that you have really good anglers that can find fish and catch big fish, and it's eye candy. It's
Yeah.
for people who like to fish. So I hope that this helps everyone clarify the rules and get boundaries and things like that just really buttoned down well in advance, because people are making decisions on which ones to fish based on those rules and boundaries. And I assume that Hobie doesn't want a lot of rivers and bounds, because Hobie's the headline sponsor, and I know those their fins on their Hobie drive don't always work the greatest in rivers. I get that, but you might be missing out on some entries if you continue that way. I would think. I mean, I've already seen it in person with the people I talked to that did not go out there
Yeah.
because of that, and I wouldn't have gone. I mean, it's the first place I'd want to fish. Not that I can't fish in lakes, because obviously national championship this year, and the first one. I mean, I can catch fish in lakes too. I just prefer the river, just like the lake guys just prefer the lake, and that's fine. To each their own.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's not, I think that's the hard perspective, and not everybody's going to join that with you, Drew. And I think that I have a similar perspective most of the time of just like not getting upset when somebody doesn't share the same viewpoint that you do. And that goes from wanting to fish lake versus river, wanting to fish Hobie versus KBF versus now BASS, versus I don't like to tournament fish at all. I just like to fish for fun. I hate tournaments because I don't like them. Like, okay, so don't like them. Like, why are you
Yeah,
participating in discussion about them then if you're not a part of it? Just like let it be. I don't know.
yeah,
It's just frustrating because it's not like, well, I hate fun fishermen. No, fun
yeah,
fishermen are great.
exactly.
Like, like I like to fun fish too. So I happen to have a competition side that I enjoy. Like, uh, I think the
Yeah,
both of
like
us are,
7 times a year, six
yeah,
times a year. That's
yeah.
it. Like, okay,
So
big
like
whoop.
the both of us is have I think a similar view as where we're just like, okay, cool, like you don't like the tournament fish, well we do, so we're gonna go do that this weekend, but we'll catch you next weekend when we're hanging out.
Fun fishing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
Uh,
mean, I think, and that's a similar perspective that I take to this. Like, I don't have ties to KBF, I don't have ties to Hobie, and I definitely don't have
yeah.
ties to BASS. But if there is a cool tournament at a location that I think I can weave into my schedule, I'm going to go. And then if
Yeah.
I find myself having a long term approach to one of their, or a big time long term goal in one of their series, I'll probably start to lean into that one a little harder.
Exactly.
So, I mean,
Exactly.
if it,
That's the play. You lean into the one you've had some good success with, um, for sure. The analogy to go along with what you're saying that I used on Facebook earlier today is, I play golf and there's a PJ Tour, but no one that just plays golf and doesn't play tournaments. 'Cause I don't play in tournaments.
mhm,
I just play golf with my buddies. I mean, I guess every once in a while we have a tournament once a year that's just, but it's still just your buddies kind of getting together and it's for a good cause, whatever. But
yeah,
I don't, I'm not like upset that there's a PJ Tour and like annoyed by people that play tournament golf at their local golf club. I'm like, it doesn't bother me one bit. Why would I care that you like to golf in tournaments and I don't? I have no idea. But for some reason in fishing, people like to pick sides and they have to either do one or the other, like one or the other. And I'm just like you. I'm like, who cares? I love to fun fish, but about 8 to 10 times a year, I'm going to be maybe 12 if I get lucky and I can fish that many. I'm going to be tournament fishing, and who cares? It's not bothering you, and you're not bothered. It doesn't bother me that you just like to fun fish, like you said. So
yeah,
I don't know, man. We're probably preaching to the choir. Anyone who listens to our podcast is probably it's
exactly.
probably thinks like we do and has just a little bit more common sense about this. But
No, I think there's a good scope of people out there, and if we offend you, I guess I apologize that you're offended by it. But it's just one of those things. Like
I
it.
don't apologize.
No apologies from Drew.
No,
So it's like this whole tournament scene, like it's exciting for me. I know that, and I can't wait to get back out there. And it's just halfway through November, and I'm already over it and waiting for season to start again. But it's just fun to talk about. It's fun to be a part of, and that competition. I think it may have been you that I was seeing, like, it's the entertainment factor, like
hmm
basketball, it, football, whatever. Like, this is bringing it more as an entertainment thing at a bigger scale than just the challenge of myself every weekend, which I still enjoy. Facing my own thing in local waters, I still do enjoy that, but this is just at a different
sure.
level. So.
No, that's right. I did mention I made an analogy about college or pro football because most people like to watch football. I guess I tried to use the biggest one possible,
Mhm.
help people understand. But boy, aren't you glad those guys decided to make this thing a league
Yeah,
and
because like,
tournaments and sports games, so it grew to this point where we have something fun to watch. It's entertaining, and not just that. Uh, More products are developed for the sport. So for golf, again, for example, because there's a PGA Tour and it grows to this competitive level, and there's a lot of big stakes involved, a lot of money involved. It only has made the club manufacturers create better products for you who may not like to do tournaments, but you've got better equipment now and you have more fun out there. It's more enjoyable because those leagues and tournaments were formed. Otherwise, that innovation would have never been there. Would never been any drive or motivation to make the clubs any better because there was nothing on the line. So
yeah,
you can't just have one without the other.
yeah, I agree.
So yeah.
I wonder, I wonder who BASS's contact is in the kayak world to, like, create their entity.
Yeah, I've got a few. I'm not going to say them on the podcast, but I talked to someone today um, who is a little bit more in the loop on that.
Gotcha.
Just an angler, a KBF angler that I thought would know a little bit, and I was actually calling him about something else, but originally, and actually when I was talking to him, this wasn't announced yet. Which was kind of funny because we just happened to be talking about it. And then afterwards, like an hour later, I texted him like, guess what just got announced? Because he was actually telling me that he thought he heard rumors that at one point it had gone up to six. They were going to do six tournaments, and then not all the contracts are signed. And then he heard there was a more of a likely chance they just weren't going to do it all this year, and they were going to wait till the following year. And then all of a sudden, an hour later, boom, there it is. And I texted it to him, and we're like, okay. But I know who they've talked to a little bit,
Hmm.
but I still they probably still need. I don't know. I don't know everyone they've talked to, so I guess I'd be
Yeah,
speaking out of line. I can't really say they need more people to consult or whatever. They need a better understanding of the kayak world because maybe they are talking to other people that I don't know that are great for it. But you
yeah,
can clearly figure out they're not talking to KBF and MLF and FLW guys because they're not going to help them. They're competitors. So
yeah,
and they didn't team up with Hobie, so that was that's a clue that never worked out if that was potentially something.
Yeah. Well,
So
and
yeah.
it's, it's curious, and people have brought it up. I don't think it's a huge deal because, I mean, it is because it is a completely different company, I guess, but that they're using Tourney X. Like, I don't think it's a bone of contention per se, but I think Tourney X and KBF kind of went hand in hand to get Tourney X's name out there. But at the same time, like, that's only going to make Tourney X better.
Yeah. If they didn't, I mean, if there was no KBF, there'd be no Tourney X. Like Tourney X was developed basically because they knew there was a lot of
There was a
numbers and a lot
need.
of entries. There was a need, yeah, and it was so. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know really much about that side, but I
Yeah,
mean,
but I mean,
it.
it's an interesting topic, I guess. Not
Yeah, it is.
necessarily that they're like jumping ship from KBF because they're offering a service that they still need. So
Hmm.
as long as Tourney X wasn't originally owned by KBF, which I don't think that they were, I think they were a separate thing. Then if they have the ability to efficiently run KBF and pass master, then what's the biggie? You know?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm excited, man. I'm just excited to see what and I tried, by the way, to sign up for these tournaments on Bass.
Mm-hmm.
You had to join
You have to be a
to be
yeah. You have to be
Bassmaster or Bass.
a Bass
Yeah, I
member.
tried to join. I did join, actually. It's
Yeah,
$15, so I
yeah, it's like
joined.
$15. It's really not bad.
But when you do that, when you join, I put in my member number that I got instantly on the email, and I tried putting it in with my last name to start signing up, and it obviously hasn't doesn't like get
Yeah,
into the system quick enough.
yeah, you
So
probably have
maybe
to
I'll
wait
wait a day.
a day or two, yeah, for their system
So
to update.
I don't, yeah, I don't really know the rules. I haven't been able to see what the rules are or
Yeah, it
anything
didn't
about.
seem like a rule list or
But
anything. Excuse me, but
I'm telling you now, if anyone out there is listening, free advice. But the areas that you're put on these tournaments and these lakes, I just know this from running river bass, and they are excited, and there are a lot of areas out there in regions that do not have these big lakes, or they have smaller lakes, and they have a lot of rivers, and they're dying to support and spend some money on some uh, the rivers, like focusing and promoting the rivers and the smaller lakes they have. Maybe it's electric only lake, or maybe it's smaller
mhm,
lakes that boats can't get into. It's a huge opportunity to find some new money that
yeah,
for these tournaments, which would help us all win. Obviously, if you get the more that these tournament trails can get from tourism departments to come there, that's a huge win for the anglers as well. So I mean, that's what I would be focused on if I were them. I would try to find these spots that have good rivers and lakes, and then allow some of the rivers upstream. You don't have to allow someone to go 60, 70 miles upstream, but
yeah.
leave some
So,
of it in
do you
bounds. And if
think
the
do you think because obviously we don't have access to any rules at this point that I'm aware of. Do you think they're going to allow motors in this series?
I think they will. Because someone mentioned that um, basically, if I'm trying to think how they mentioned it, but okay, if you think about it, Bass has a lot of ties with these motor companies,
Hmm.
and if the competition for Bass, I mean, if what they see as their competition is MLF and FLW, and their counterpart has motors, they would want to, you would think, make their sponsors happy that have and sell motors, and try to take some market share from them. Like, here's another motor option series that's, you know, in their opinion, like
Yeah.
better because you get to enter the Bassmaster Classic if you win. We're going to pay down to 30 places, $30,000, and somebody else mentioned this. I read somewhere they said, Bass will probably allow motors. They don't care. They just are all about the fishing. They don't care about the purity of the sport. They're not a kayak company like Hobie. They run theirs. They're a
Hmm.
kayak company that does not have any ties to motors. So they're more of that on that purist side. And Bass, they're all about the purist and sense of just catching the fish. How's the fastest way, the best way we can get to these fish? That's it. So I would think they would allow motors, but we could all be surprised. And because if they don't, I'd be shocked, because then that leaves KBF as the only one that allows motors, which gives them the whole market for a lot of folks that want to put a motor on there and
Yeah. Well, I think
cruise around. It's a little easier. It is. I mean, on these
I think
lakes, it's easier.
I think there's other options than Torpedo right now, but I just don't think they're at the same level as Torpedo. And
Hmm.
I think that if they have a sponsor or a company that's willing to step up and start understanding why maybe Torpedo is such a good company in this, sort of part of fishing and kayaks and stuff, then it may, that might be the market share that you're talking about is the true competitor with
Hmm.
Torpedo for kayaks. That may be
Yeah.
an avenue that they could potentially be looking at if they're allowing motors
Oh,
on.
it's for sure. It's going to grow into that easily. I can see that now. I can see next year at ICAST multiple trolling motor companies. Now that there are many trolling motor companies between Torpedo,
Hmm.
Lowrance, Garmin, Motor Guide,
Well, and I
Minn
think
Kota.
now that Bassmaster has put their name, or BASS has put their name into it, now those companies are going to, we don't have, I think there's going to be less of a fight to get those companies on board with trying to get
Hmm.
into this game. Like they've just opened a door. And
Absolutely.
now, there's a reason to try to get into this sort of field because when you see, because they said, this obviously is following suit a little bit. But in this article, they said that the winners or the placers will be celebrated with the bass boat guys on Celebration Day or whatever. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty much instant media. If one of your guys is using something, hey, yeah,
Hmm.
I was able to use my whatever to efficiently get to my spots. So,
Yeah, I agree. It is. And let me ask you this. This is a same topic, but let me approach it from a different way.
okay.
Take us a little different direction. What do you think is the most exciting, um, the most entertaining from a television perspective? Because these television contracts are going to come into play with this BASS involved now with the ESPN. I guess they air on and the live stream stuff that FLW, MLF, they all use it. They all have airtime on whatever CBS Discovery. What is the most right now currently? Open question to anyone listening. Think in your head, and Ken, I'll ask you. What has ever been the most exciting situations or things that have happened in a bass boat tournament to these pros that we've watched that tends to draw the most, be the most viral clip later on, or tends to draw the best rating? What's the most exciting moments in bass boat fishing currently? Do you have any ideas what some of the most exciting ones that you can remember, or the way tournaments are won, or anything
Um,
unique or exciting that's happened?
I think
What's
there's the offshoot ones that are like the silly things that people remember, like um, people having to take penalties or whatever to get out
hmm
of their boat because they made the impossible cast and they're like, if I get bit, I'll deal with it after I get bit, sort of
yeah,
thing. And then they have to either hop off their boat and walk down a dock or, do something silly like that and take a penalty of some degree to be able to land the fish or what have you. I think those get pretty popular because they do
yeah,
create some pretty interesting scenarios and fun things to watch, and then
some drama.
some drama. And then I think the next part is kind of a tie in my brain between if you know where you're at versus the person next to you at like a bubble slot. Sometimes when I was watching those MLF episodes, I wasn't as interested in who was winning in the first 2 or 3 days. I was interested in the race for the bubble. And you could
Yeah,
see people climb up and down per catch with that live system. And that
it's
to
pretty
me
cool. Yeah,
is really cool and and kept my attention span much longer than just watching a fishing tournament that was recorded 3 months ago that's just
hmm
now airing. I already know the
oh yeah,
winner.
for sure.
So, you know what I mean? Like that was a lot more
Yeah,
interesting to me to watch that. And then I guess like I have a hard time balancing that with when somebody does catch a 4, 5, 6+ pounder. Like
hmm
that's always just fun to watch, no matter what.
yeah. That is. If you like fishing, that for sure is a win. A big
But I
six,
mean,
7 pounder.
that live fight for your life in a tournament is really, really, really interesting to watch. And it doesn't, having the coinciding pictures of them live, like seeing them panic, seeing them be real people
Yeah.
is really cool. But just the mere fact that if you could just watch the numbers and watch them jump up and down, that's almost enough for me. Is, keeping track of those guys down to the last 10 seconds and see somebody bump up, with 5 seconds left. Got to
That'll
fish it.
make you nervous. I mean, that will get on. I mean, that'll make you
Mm-hmm.
nervous in a heartbeat when you think about it, they actually know where they are exactly all the time when they're asking their marshals.
Yeah. Can you
That'll
keep?
make you panic, stress out, and
Yep.
probably fish way faster than you
Yep. Exactly.
want
That's
to.
what
Like,
it's going to
can
bring
you
up. Are you
deal
gonna
with that pressure?
Are you going to retrieve your baits wrong because you're trying to get six more casts in instead of
Mm-hmm.
doing what you did to catch the fish before, but you're all panicked because you got 15 seconds to catch 1 pounder to get your spot back?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah, dealing with that
that's really
pressure. Now,
intense.
the what you mentioned were certainly things that I had in my mind in my head, and the other one. So the point of me asking this question is back to the TV contracts. This is all about entertainment. I mean, it's for fun for the anglers, and then for people watching, it's to entertain them, and they can learn, of course, too. Because if you're watching it, you probably do it, so you'll learn. But my whole point was just simply that kayak fishing, basically, anything that's been exciting on bass boats, like you said, all the strange, weird things where they have to get on a dock or they make a cast, they get a penalty, they have to somehow find a way to get the fish from under the dock or over it or whatever. But the other illustrations I thought of were tournaments that are won with guys either making a super long run way up some, whether they're going out of, I don't know, this Sabine
Mm-hmm.
River into the ocean and up into Galveston, up the river there, or they're doing the same thing in Georgetown this year on Bass, and they go up out Winona Bay into the saltwater and then up Charleston into this Cooper River, making this crazy long run. Like it creates this element of drama and time. Like, can this guy lose 3 hours of fishing in the day
Mm-hmm.
or four? Go that far? Can he pull it off, or can those 15 guys are doing that, or will the people who stayed home win? It's like there's this sort of element
Yeah.
of. The other thing is it's similar along the same lines. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe they didn't go that far, but it's just they got their boat trimmed up all the way. They're trying to fight through some muck and mud to some shallow water to get up into some river or creek or some crazy place that other boats can't get to. And, can they do it without getting stuck? Is it going to pay off? Is it not? Like you said, is it Iconelli breaks his fishing line and he jumps off the bass boat but has to keep 1 foot on to stay legal, grabs the line, pulls the fish in, all that crazy excitement. My whole point in all this is kayak fishing, you don't have to. This doesn't happen like rarely, like these best stories I've talked about for the bass boat tournaments do. It's kind of like, these rare situations where they're going to run that far in their boats. Rare situations, someone breaks a line or throws over a dock and has to take a penalty or whatever for getting out of their boat. In a kayak, it happens like every single time, every tournament, almost every angler, especially when you get
Mm-hmm.
into more wild places and backwaters and rivers and creeks and places like that. It's constant entertainment in an athletic sport. And can he figure out, how to get to the fish or over this log? Can he make it through that rapid, that class 3, without
Yeah.
flipping over and losing his stuff? And just can he find these fish in these wild and just unkept environments? Is to me that's what I'm getting at. I think that the winner of all of this is going to be the one who figures that out eventually. Like, wait, we've already done all this in the lakes with the bass boats. Why are we doing the exact same thing? We
Yeah.
can still let the kayak guys fish those, but oh my goodness, these can go into some of these other places the boats can't get. They can go through these culverts on X X lake. You know what I mean? They can
Yeah.
get through them, so this water's legal. How cool is that? We can show these guys getting through that culvert. I remember some bass boat tournaments, Bassmaster tournaments have been won with a guy who used like a 18-foot John boat and went through a small bridge that was so low, and he had to lay down pretty much and keep all the seats down and get underneath there to get to a body of water that's still connected, so it's legal, but other boats couldn't get there. I can't remember what year that was. I remember seeing that. But that's like such a cool story, man.
Yeah.
Like
Exactly.
that's the kind of exciting stuff. So we'll see, man, if anybody kind of figures that out. But
Yeah. It's interesting the direction that this all will take because we've been waiting for it, and people have been screaming for it for years. But now it's like time. It's time to see how it develops. Like we want bigger, and now it's bigger. So what happens? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and it's it's cool because I think that it gives a goal for people that if you have fun fishing in your local tournaments, great. Continue to do it. Support them. They're grassroots. Those are local companies. Like that's where it all started, and that's what will continue at its heart. But now there's something to look at to be like, that's where I want to be one day. That's where I want to get one
Yeah.
day. Is there, and we're at the beginning of that because it's like okay, because 2 years ago, be like, yeah, okay, I can fish local tournaments for fun, but like is there anything more to that, or am I truly putting all this stuff into like for rec time, which is fine. But
Mm-hmm.
now you can if you get a kid that's 16 and he's getting out there fishing tournaments with us, like there's somewhere for him to go other than just fish with a bunch of old farts sitting in plastic boats, you know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
it
Yeah.
just adds another level to it, I think, that should be appreciated.
I agree, man. Preaching to the choir on that one. We'd love to hear y'all's thoughts out there. If you want to make some posts, you can do it on Hooked on Wild Waters Instagram or Facebook page. Feel free to drop us any private messages as well. We'll be glad to talk about those next time on the show. But I don't really know. I don't have a lot more to add here other than the one thing I noticed on the schedule that will be interesting is how are the turnouts on March 5th going to be at the Bassmaster event number one, the Bass event number one on Logan Martin,
Mm-hmm.
compared to the KBF Pro Series on uh, Caddo Lake or Shreveport again, because that's on March 7th and 8th. So if you think about it, if you're there March 5th, and let's say they do a results on the 5th that evening, it's Alabama's still, I would say, maybe 8 hours from Shreveport, where they are in Alabama,
Yeah.
maybe probably 8. So is anyone going to fish that event and the 2-day event on Caddo Lake in Shreveport, Caddo, whatever,
Yeah.
all the lakes that you can choose? There's about 3 lakes you can choose from. I mean, I don't know. That's going to be the one that's got the conflicting dates that I see
That's a
as being
long weekend.
really long. And just think about it. The next one is on March 14th. Sorry, it's March 5th, and then March 7th and 8th, and then March 14th again with the Bass event number 2 on Lake Fork. So they've got the KBF Pro Tour at Shreveport uh, basically surrounded.
Yeah.
But there's also a Hobie event on March 14th and 15th on Lake Norman.
Yeah, I think there's enough
So
guys in Texas to fill out the Lake Fork one on its own, though.
probably, yeah, I think for sure they will fill that one on its own, no problem. And the thing is, they'll probably some of the Texas guys may not get over to the Bassmaster Classic event, but I think they'll fish the 7th and 8th event
Yeah,
on the border. They're in
and
Shreveport,
and then back it up with
and then back it up.
Lake Fork.
Yep,
Yeah, Lake
Lake
Fork
Fork.
might end up being a more popular one than their first one. I think that's what I'm going to say. I think
Yeah, I mean, yes and no, but the first one is tied to the Bassmaster Classic, so
true.
that's pretty
Yeah, that's pretty
hard to
cool.
beat.
It's a
And
cool
it's
thing to do. Like you could fish that, and then you're there, and you can just be part of the classic while you're down there. Like
but it is during a weekday.
yes, it is a
It's
Thursday.
Thursday, and then the other one is on the 14th, which is a Saturday.
Hmm.
So, and we'll find out too. These KBF events are 2-day events, and the Bass ones are just one day. So,
Yeah,
but we'll see. I mean, I'm not gonna. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I mean, I can. I mean, you're not gonna have any time if you could. You get? Could you drive 8 hours after fishing that tournament on in Alabama and get over to Louisiana and have one day to pre-fish on the 6th? Maybe, but would you feel confident in going all the way over there for one day of pre-fishing?
yeah.
Ugh,
Yeah,
I don't
that's a
know.
rough call. That's a big gamble. That's a big gamble. You'd have to. It would almost be. I think the only situation for that. Well, I don't know. I was just thinking if you are already in the Texas Shreveport area, like, and you know your spots and you know your water, you go give it a shot, and then you come back and fish your
Yeah,
waters. Like, unless I had like 2 weeks off and I went down to Alabama, fished that, then head over to Shreveport and try that. And it was just like what I did for the year, maybe.
Hmm.
But if you're really making a run at some of this stuff, that's not going to be the only thing you want to do for the year.
No, I don't know, man. I've been toying with it. It's like, how do you miss fishing at the Classic?
Yeah.
But I can't go all the way from Charlotte all the way to Shreveport and pre-fish a couple days, and then drive back to Alabama to to pre-fish like one day, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
and then man, that's not
That's
even enough. That's not even enough
yeah.
one day. I mean,
No, it's
and then
it's really not. I mean,
I don't know, man. The
it,
only way to do it would be to go fish off history in Shreveport, based on how I did at the national championship, fish off history,
yeah.
and have one day to go over there and fish just to check and see if fish are anywhere in the same area that I fished before.
But then that's the
And
other thing though is we got to come right back to Alabama in the beginning of April.
yeah, yeah, I mean that's right. I mean that's true. I mean right there again, the beginning of April.
So you might as well just stay out there for a month.
I might as well just give up any shot of being a good husband or dad if this is this is the
Exactly.
case. That's the way it's going to go.
Uh,
I'm out on all this. So
yeah, no,
this is
that's an interesting point. Like traveling and planning and being able to do it. Like obviously, it's out of my league. Period. You have a chance that you could potentially figure it out with how you're set up, but like that, you're going to start stretching some people thin if they try to do all of them.
man. Let me look into the spreadsheet. There's about 20 events on here that I had within my reach, and I have to narrow it down to like 10 or 12 or something.
You got to
I'm
make
already
cuts.
feeling stretched thin. You know what I mean? Already,
Exactly.
and hasn't even started yet. And I'm like, what in the world am I going to do?
I was wondering what kind of wrench this was going to throw in your plans. As soon as I saw it, I was like, we're going to have to go over that schedule again,
Yeah,
huh?
I'm sad to not probably be able to fish the Lake Fork one, just because I've never fished Lake Fork, and it's such a well-known big bass lake.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a lot of Texas guy that would probably just know it so well. I mean, they fish that lake all the time. Matthew Scott just literally basically lives on that lake and crushes it, and those guys are all really good. But you'd almost feel comfortable if you went over there and had at least like 3 days of pre-fish. But I mean, there's just no way with all those all back to back, March
Mhm.
5th, 7th, and 8th, 14th. No way. Plus that far away from home, I gotta pick and choose. So,
Oh, wait. I may have just stumbled upon something here last minute.
oh,
If it
a
loads.
little measurable output from Dr. Noisewater for once.
Oh, thanks. Let's see. Oh, I found the rules.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Breaking news
Um,
coming in already. Breaking
yeah.
news.
Tournament registration. There's PDF. It's on bassmaster.com. I don't know how I found it through a Facebook link, but
Ooh,
it's available. So the rules are out there. Let's see tournament
well, that's cool.
registration. Let's see if there's anything that pops up super quick. Nope, it's just the you have to be a member thing. Okay.
I mean, where? So it's somewhere on their website.
Yeah, here. I wonder if I can.
Email it over to me or whatever. We could
I
live.
typed it in chat in our recording
Oh,
system here.
okay. Yeah. Let me check this out. So, all right. This looks pretty sweet. Sorry for the
The little dead
radio
air.
silence here, but
Yeah. you got.
kayak series rules. Here's a 2020 kayak series fact sheet. Um, are you reading the rules? I'll click on the fact
I
sheet.
was trying to, but mine's
I'm going to read over the fact sheet just so you guys can hear it. While you're doing that, I'm going to read over this
okay.
fact sheet. It says 5 national regional events. I think that's a little bit, is that sort of an oxymoron, national regional events? But anyway, so there's 5 national regional events, all cash payout, no tournament waters off limits. No tournament waters off limits. What does that mean? Oh, I see what you're saying. They're saying no off limits time for pre-fishing. Is that what they're saying? No tournament waters off limits. Or there is no off limits on the tournament waters. I don't know. I guess you'll read that in the rules. Official practice begins the Monday prior to each event. See official rules in parentheses. Official practice begins. So there is an off limits time or something because official practice begins the Monday prior to each event.
Oh, so okay, so here there's content rights already. That's number 2 in the rules. There's content rights. So basically they are planning on being able to televise this to some degree.
Sure.
Um, so anglers may use up to 10 minutes of video for their own shot by the angler during the tournament for promotional or marketing purposes and in social media. So
Right.
if you were to record yourself, you would only be allowed to use 10 minutes of it to make any sort of video.
That's
Um,
fine. Whatever.
During bass
Um,
tournaments, they may ask you to mount a GoPro or similar camera in a competitor's boat to use for BASS.
right. Um, my next
Refusing to
bullet here.
comply may
Go
result in
ahead.
a penalty. Sorry.
Oh wow, they're serious about it.
Yeah.
Um, so official practice begins the Monday prior to each event. Registration and briefing will be the afternoon, evening prior to competition. Advertised payout based on 150 boats, adjusted for actual field size. Top 10% or 20 anglers, whichever is greater, from each national regional advance to the 2021 Huck BASS Nation Kayak Series Championship. So, just like we suspected, that will be at the Bassmaster Classic. The leaderboard will be posted on Bassmaster.com. The 2020 Huck Bass Nation Kayak Series format, one competition day. Entry fee $250. Catch, photo, release. Best 5 fish make up a daily limit. 2020 Huck Bass Nation Kayak Series payout, which we've already talked about, $30,000. The 2020 all 5 events, it equals $150,000. I guess that's what they're saying. Which does that make? I don't know. I guess that makes sense. Yeah, it does. It adds up. First place, $7,000. I thought it was supposed to be more than that. I thought, okay, total per event is 30,000, but first place is 7. Okay,
Yeah.
final payout adjusted. Who qualifies for the 2021 Huck Bass Nation Kayak Series Championship, held in conjunction with the 2021 Bassmaster Classic. The top 10% or 20 anglers, whichever is greater, from each national regional. So just like we thought, we didn't even need this fact sheet. We pretty much had this all figured out already.
Yeah.
So the top 5 from each state BASS nation that holds BASS Nation Kayak State Championship. So obviously, that's something new. The top 5 from each state BASS nation that holds BASS Nation Kayak State Championship. So obviously, they're teaming up with local clubs or something to hold state championships. Any angler that fishes 4 of the 5 national regionals. So if you go to 4 of the 5, you're automatically in to the 2021 championship at the Bassmaster Classic. So, hey, you could potentially do that. You miss Clear Lake, you know what I mean? Just go to Wisconsin, Texas,
Yeah.
Alabama, and Tennessee.
They are going to allow motors. There
Okay.
is a solicitation part where you're not allowed to use your cell phones during competition hours except for to submit your fish or emergencies like during the official competition days of the tournament. A competitor may not make a cell phone calls for the purpose of locating or catching fish on tournament waters. You're allowed to talk to other anglers, but you can't call them on your cell phone. So like if I run
Right.
into you, I can talk to you about whatever, but I can't be like, if we're across the lake, I couldn't call you and be like, "Hey, Drew, I'm not doing well. Like, what are you doing?"
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can't call them, but if you come across them on the lake, you can talk to them.
Right.
Um, Pre-tournament angler code of conduct and sportsmanship, kayak regulation. They have regulations on what kayaks would be allowed. Tackle and equipment, permitted fishing
I'm reading the
location.
rules now too, just so you know,
Yeah.
I'm on it too. They're actually making you have an emergency whistle and 360-degree light or installed LEDs that are visible from all angles. You have to wear your PFD, obviously.
Oh, you
Let's
are
see.
not allowed to leave your kayak. At no time may a contestant leave the kayak to land a fish, photograph or submit a fish, or to make the kayak more accessible to fishing waters. So no dragging, no
Oh.
standing next to your kayak to take a picture of it like long ways on your kayak.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Boats may never be tethered to buoys or safety signs. Yeah, that's usual.
What about um, which number are you on? Which rule?
10. I didn't. I was skimming through a lot.
Yeah. So your vessel must be 9 foot minimum and shorter than 18 foot. Catamaran style personal fishing vessels complying with all other regulations will be eligible. No homemade kayaks would be permitted. The use of manual or motorized anchor system is permitted. C, we want to please power pole. Read, we want to please power pole and allow a powered micro anchor since they support us.
Yeah.
Mother shipping, tethering, or holding, or any transportation coordinated with a non-competitor is prohibited. The similar rules, like all bass caught while sight fishing must be hooked inside the mouth. No fish can be kept on stringers. And fish gripping devices are acceptable to temporarily hold fish in the water. Only one fishing rod may be used at a time. Each cast must be completed before another is made.
So, sorry, I'm a little.
Trolling is not allowed. Trolling as a method of fishing is not allowed. Long lining and drifting with current wind are allowed.
Okay.
Alabama rigs and similar umbrella rigs are allowed and are only limited by the laws within the state they are fishing.
There's a point system to advance to the Nation Kayak Series Championship.
There's a what?
There's a point system. B.A.S.S Nation Kayak Series events will be based on a 200-point system, regardless of the field size. The winner of each event will receive 200 points, second 199 until the points run out. Competitors must weigh a legal bass in the competition to receive points. In the case where one or more competitors do not weigh a legal bass, points will end at the place of competitors weighing a legal bass. And then there's tiebreakers, and top 10% from each bass event, minimum of 25 anglers will advance to the BNKS. The top 25 AOI points and all ties that are not broken by the tiebreakers listed in Rule 15 will advance. So there is a point system to qualify for the guest championship in 2021.
It's interesting because they also said that it was the 20 anglers of the top 10% from each of these events qualify for the championship in 2021. So is it a point system? What's that point system for? Is
The
it
point system
Angler of the Year?
for Angler of the Year. Top 10% from
For
each.
Angler of the Year.
Yeah, top 10% from each individual event with a minimum of 25 anglers will gain in advance.
Yeah.
And then the other way to qualify is to be top 25 in AOI points.
Right.
So I guess it doesn't show that there's a minimum of events that you have to participate in. So if you could make it to 2, you'd probably have a really good chance at getting in that top 25 as long as you turn in fish. That's how I'm reading that. Because, I mean, I don't know who's going to be able. I mean, there are probably very few that are going to be able, unless they go all in on this, they're going to be able to go to Alabama, then Texas, then Chickamauga, and then La Crosse, and then California. That's just kind of an out there one. Like that's for California people only, or super West Coast people, I think only. So, I mean, I could see guys making to maybe 3 of them.
Yeah. This is all interesting. Sorry, we're reading this on the fly here, but it's probably still good for those of you guys listening who have not read these.
Like raw reactions from us too. So
true. There is all fish must measure a minimum of 12 inches. Bass submitted that fail to measure 12 with mouth closed will not be scored. So there's always going to be at least a 12-inch minimum.
Which I'm okay with. I think that's fine.
Yeah, that is fine. If you're catching them smaller than 12, you're not probably placing anyway.
Yeah.
Although, if you don't have 5 fish and you need that,
that last one, yeah.
11 and a half incher will move you a lot up the standings. So,
yeah.
So this is interesting. They have a diagram showing how the fish are on the board, and it does not look like you're allowed to pinch the tail and move it up and down the hog trough to get, as much as you can out of the fish. It has to be laying. Its tail has to be centered on the board and relaxed, and quote relaxed. That's going to get a little dicey because what if somebody's this little teeny bit, like barely pinched in, not like where it's still looks pretty much normal, but just also kind of looks like it's barely pinched in.
Yeah.
And they're touching that other quarter of an inch line. Like, what do they do?
Pinching the tail is not permitted.
So now what about boundaries? Have you seen anything?
Boundaries. There was a mention of it. I know it says no guides within 21 days of the tournament. I did see that.
All right, let's read it here. Permitted fishing locations. Restrictions Designated launch points, official tournament waters, and other location mandates may be issued for individual events. Contestants may fish anywhere on tournament waters available to the public and accessible by kayak, except areas posted or otherwise designated as, quote, off limits, no boats, keep out, restricted, no trespassing, or no fishing, or similar language or markings intended to restrict public access by bass, commercial property owners, and or local, state, or federal officials. All fishing must be conducted from inside the kayak unless otherwise stated. At no time may a contestant leave the kayak. You already mentioned that. To land or a fish, photograph, submit a fish, or to make the kayak more accessible. Cutting of trees, bushes, or logs after the start of the pre-tournament meeting or the removal of official local, state, or federal barricades at any time to make an area more accessible by kayak is prohibited and may result in disqualification. Boats may never be tethered. You mentioned that. The use of cables, ropes, chains, or any type of block and tackle system to maneuver a kayak into fishing waters is strictly prohibited. Using any items, including the kayak or fishing line, to block an area off to other competitors or anglers is strictly prohibited.
It's that
So,
defense you're always talking about.
yeah, exactly. If you're going to build like a spider web of braided line at the entrance
Yeah.
to some creek that,
Yeah. What are those
can't do it.
those spider web like kayak protection nets or whatever that has that alarm go off if you move the web or something? That's what you're
Yeah.
talking about. So what is this? Use the chains or any type of block and tackle system.
I
Is that like
don't.
where you like would you just like throw it like have like a small cannonball on a chain, you throw it ahead of you so it lands, you could just drag your kayak over like dry land like that? Like is that what that's
I
like?
guess
Like
I don't understand that, but the
so
only thing I
basically
gained from
that's
with
basically
that,
like writing off your scooch rule. Like you know how you're
yeah,
like
basically,
yeah. Like technically I floated over it because I never like I was able to scooch over it. Like that's if as long as you're not using your paddles, I guess, or it
I
doesn't
guess.
mention that you're not using any of these
Mm-mm.
other things. So I guess your scooch would still apply.
Yeah, I guess it would. I'm staying in the kayak, but all I'm really interested in is like the very first one: restrictions, designated launch points, official tournament waters, and other location mandates may be issued for individual events. Well, I'm pretty sure they have to be issued for every one of these individual events because right now you're saying Lake Logan Martin. Well, now what?
So if
Where?
it
How far up are the rivers?
yeah, like
Logan
is it
Martin. Like
connected
what's?
to Logan Market? And if it is connected to it somehow, and I can do it without throwing a chain and dragging myself over stuff, is it legal water then? Like
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I
I'll
don't
have to
know.
tighten
They
it
got
up.
to.
But this is a pretty good. I'm going to say right off the bat, it's a pretty good rule set for just coming out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's pretty locked in, and that content rights right off the bat is something that caught my eye. Like they are ready to do this because they want to be able to publicize it for
Mm-hmm.
themselves.
Yeah. No, it's pretty good for sure. They'll just have to make specific rules about. And I pray to God they don't just say you can only access at these 6 spots. It's just going to put people right on top of each other.
Yeah,
It ruins the fun for us. I mean, the excitement and everyone I've talked to feels the same way. Part of the thrill and the competitive advantage is the fun and the joy of just being able to scout all winter on all these lakes that we're going to be fishing next year, where you can access or where you could find uh, some fish, and then if you can see a spot that may hold good fish, like how are you going to find some access that's close to it that's legal
mm,
that other people may not be able to find? A lot of times, that's more important than finding really good fishing area. Sometimes, because if you find a good fishing spot and 6 other people have found it too, you may not be as well off as a spot that's not quite as good, but you're the only one that could find it and get there. So
yeah,
to me, that's a competitive advantage sort of thing that I think we all enjoy. Those of us who really are into this serious, that's what we enjoy. We don't want people to dictate all these exact 5 places we can launch from, or and which eliminates so much water. If you can't tell me there's any spot in that lake, um, I mean, if there's no spot that I cannot fish launch from, right? No, nothing's off limits as long as it's legal. Then I've got the whole lake to pretty much figure out where I want to fish, which is the way it should be, where the best fishing spot is. it's up to me to figure out, can I even physically get there in enough time to make it worth my while to get there? Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So
I guess
anyway,
one last thing that I noticed is there isn't like a cap. It looks like this 150 person is just what they're basing their numbers off of for payout. So like it doesn't cut off at 150 registrants per se,
all
from
right,
how
cool.
I'm reading
More the
it.
merrier.
Because then it says based on fields of 150, but then this final payout adjusted at percentage of 150 boats in parentheses plus minus of actual field size. So
Hmm.
it's saying that there potentially could be more than 150 participants. So they're not capping their participants at 150. So the purses could be bigger depending on population of said tournament.
Right. Well, man, I'll kind of start closing this thing up, and all I got to say is I'm actually glad that I'm not running a tournament right now and have to sort through all this, because I can tell right now that this is, whether or not anyone will admit it, with any of these other tournament trails, they're all like hunkering down now and about to fight harder than they've ever fought before and worked harder than they ever have, because they know they have to still be the best and stay the best and at least the top two, you know what I mean, to sustain. And man, that does not sound fun to me, because it was hard enough just to put one of these on. Now I got extra added pressure of trying to make it so good that everyone wants to fish mine. And I'm so glad to be on the other side. I've got all the options now. I'm an angler. I'm stress free. I'm relaxed. I'm excited about checking out all these tournaments where I'm going to fish. This is
You're
great. I mean, I
stressing
don't,
about how to get there and not how to
yeah,
make it be there.
that's right. I'm mostly just kind of excited. And, I don't think it changes what I do too much. There's just a couple of these tournaments I can fish on the B.A.S.S side, but, we'll just have to see what, I guess, gets kicked to the curb. What I can convince my wife to allow me to do without, you know, being gone too long, because it's tough, handling a toddler on her own when I'm gone. So
Yeah.
we'll see, man. But
All right. Well, I think we beat this topic to death on its initiation. I'm sure we'll circle back to it at some point, but
I think we will, and hopefully everybody out there tends to spread the message of just, I don't know what the message is, like we talked about earlier, of love and appreciation for everyone who's working any of these tournament trails that provide us these opportunities. And not one of them is perfect. If all are going to have flaws, and they're going to make mistakes this year. But the more and more we do this, the better and better it's going to keep getting. So let's all cut them a little slack, because I think all of their hearts are in the right places. Be it AJ and the guys at Hobie, Chad and Joe and Richard and everybody, Amanda, Christy, everyone at Lynette, probably forgetting somebody, everyone at KBF that runs it, and everybody at Bass. They're trying their best, and let's don't jump to any conclusions. Let's give it a year or two and let the dust settle and see what the tournament experience is. Let's see how well they're all run, and which ones have their rules and all this stuff buttoned down where it's understandable for us. Because one thing is the loser will be anyone who changes rules last minute, or doesn't have clearly defined rules and boundaries, which are things that we need to know before we go fish these events. We base on, whether we're going to fish the events based on the rules and the boundaries. So whoever can do that the best, I personally feel, will come out on top, because I'm sure all their payouts are probably pretty similar for the most part.
mm-hmm.
We have to go back and look at that. It sounds like they're pretty similar. You're gonna see 100 and whatever, 75 to 150 anglers, and the entry fees are going to be similar, $200 to $300, and the payout for first place is going to be 6,000-7,000. I mean, it's the way it's going to be. So we'll see. Closing thoughts for you, my friend?
Nothing. I'm just excited to watch it all go down, and I'm really excited to watch it. Period. Like, because I may dabble in a little bit of this stuff, but like watching it is very exciting to me at this point.
Yeah, and we still are going to do our fantasy
See that?
kayak
Yeah, this
fishing.
throws a whole
So
nother angle into it. So
another 5 tournaments. So, and now California's in the mix, so changes things a little bit. There's a lot of good anglers out there that may not have made some of the other ones, and now got a big tournament out there for those guys. So I'm happy for them. Clear Lake's a good fishery, so be exciting to see California get a little bit more involved.
cool. Anybody,
All
any
right.
housekeeping we need to do at the end here? Or
Oh, just a huge thanks to all of our sponsors. You guys go check them out. Please review the podcast. Give us a 5-star review if you feel it deserves it. I know today was kind of emergency off the cuff, so don't hold us to this lone podcast
this
and how
one was
scattered we
for
were.
you
But
guys. We
it's not
rearranged
like
our
we were
schedules
reading.
for you to talk about this stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like we were reading the rules for this thing as we were on the podcast live. We didn't do our prep work or anything beforehand. But so, yeah, please give us a good review if you guys appreciate us doing these podcasts, and support the sponsors. Support all those that support us. And you can find out who those sponsors are if you go check out hookedonwildwaters.com. They're all right there on the sponsors tab. It means a lot. You have no idea. I mean, you really don't have no idea how much every one of these brands that support us really need, and I think deserve our support back in terms of purchasing from them and their products, because they're putting in and investing into us. They're the ones who are helping make these tournaments happen. So let's show them some love, and thank you guys for being a part of this tonight. And I'll try to get this uploaded ASAP. So today is Thursday, and it's 9 o'clock. I'm hopefully get it up tonight. That's what I'm hoping for, Ken. Tonight, if
Awesome.
not Friday morning. People heading to work, you're listening to this. We will catch you guys later. Peace out.
Bye.
See ya.